Maybe you've gone through the most painful moments of your life and no one even noticed. Maybe not even you. You might be surrounded by people, yet there's still this emptiness nothing seems to fill. Conversations feel shallow, smiles feel automatic, and no matter how hard you try to fit in, something inside you just doesn't. Jung once said that the process of individuation, the true awakening, begins when the soul refuses to keep sleeping inside a life that no longer makes sense. And that's why your pain isn't a failure, it's a calling. Your anger, sadness, and confusion are not signs of weakness. They're portals to your awakening. You've been shaped in silence, trying to understand who you are and why you feel so deeply. Maybe what you've been calling confusion is actually the beginning of clarity. Because awakening rarely begins with peace, it begins with disruption. So if you've been feeling different lately, more sensitive, more aware, less tolerant of the superficial, maybe you're one of the few who's walking through this journey. Today, through the lens of Jung's psychology, I'm going to show you the 7 signs your soul is going through a spiritual awakening, even if the world hasn't noticed yet. And it usually begins with the simplest, yet hardest lesson: learning to be alone without feeling lonely. The first sign is that your relationship with solitude changes. Loneliness stops feeling like punishment and becomes a refuge. Silence turns fertile, the place where you find creativity, intuition, and answers. The need for external validation fades away. You start feeling peace just by being with yourself. It's the beginning of emotional self-sufficiency. There comes a moment in life when silence stops being scary. You realize you don't need to fill every minute with voices, noise, or messages anymore. At first, it feels weird, like something's wrong with just being alone. But slowly, the emptiness starts to feel full of you. It's in that space, where no one's watching or judging, that your soul finally breathes. What once felt like loneliness now begins to turn into presence. You start noticing that silence isn't absence, it's expansion. It shows you what noise used to hide: your real thoughts, your genuine desires, your purest truths. Funny how, when the world goes quiet, your heart starts talking. Out of nowhere, ideas appear, intuition grows stronger, and even old memories start rearranging themselves like puzzle pieces. That's where creativity blooms, because nothing grows in the chaos of distraction. But getting there takes courage. The first impact of solitude is always discomfort. Your mind tries to convince you that you're being forgotten, but it's not abandonment, it's purification. It's like the universe removes everyone's noise so you can finally hear your own voice again. Once you understand that, loneliness stops being punishment and becomes a ritual. Little by little, you start enjoying your own company. No masks, no filters, no rush. And then something shifts. You stop chasing validation. You stop posting to prove, talking to convince, pleasing to be accepted. It's freeing when you realize you no longer need applause to exist. Peace no longer depends on others. It lives within you. The same solitude that once hurt now protects you, because it separates noise from essence. Once you find yourself, the world can go silent. You don't feel alone anymore. This is the beginning of emotional self-sufficiency. When you finally see that company and connection are 2 different things. Connection is a choice, not a craving. It's when you choose to be with someone because you want to, not because you need to. And that changes everything. You start attracting people who don't drain you, but add to your life. People who respect your silence, who aren't scared of your space. Because once you've learned to be enough for yourself, you'll never beg for attention again. And maybe this is the most silent sign of awakening. When you realize your inner world is too vast to fit into any distraction. Loneliness stops being a dark place and becomes a sacred cave, where you reconnect with what's eternal. And inside that temple, a calm truth rises: you were never alone. You were just finally whole. If this first sign resonated with you, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and comment which country you're watching from. The second sign is that you begin to integrate your shadow, the the parts of yourself you once rejected or feared. You begin to see your anger, envy, and fear without denying them. Jung once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." Your anger turns into a cleansing force, no longer a destructive one. You stop trying to be good all the time and start being whole. You realize your ugly side isn't your enemy. It's a vital part of your humanity. Integrating the shadow isn't about fixing who you are, but accepting what's always been there. It's when you stop fighting your emotions and start listening to them. Anger shows you where your boundaries were crossed. Fear protects you from what still needs to be built. Envy points you toward what you secretly want to create. None of these emotions are villains. They only become dangerous when you deny them. It's easy to want to live only in the light, but the truth is, real growth happens in the dark. The shadow is a mirror reflecting the parts of yourself you hid just to be loved. When you start bringing them into awareness, something changes in your eyes. They gain truth. You no longer need to be the nice one, the spiritual one, or the one in control. You start being what you've always been, whole. Embodying that wholeness is freedom. You realize you don't have to apologize for feeling or explain what you feel. Anger becomes creative fire. Fear becomes wisdom in motion. Envy transforms into clarity of purpose. It's the kind of alchemy no book can teach you, only life, with its falls and reflections, can reveal it. And the more you accept your shadows, the less power they hold over you. It's a quiet but profound process, like lighting a candle in a dark room and realizing the monster in the corner was only a reflection of what hadn't been loved yet. When you learn to look at your own shadow, something changes deeply in the way you see others. Suddenly, what used to hurt you now only reveals. You start to understand that much of what comes from others isn't about you. It's about who's projecting. The third sign is that you develop immunity to projection. You stop absorbing other people's emotions and start recognizing what's truly yours. Before, you used to absorb other people's emotions. Now, you can tell what's yours and what's not. You learn to hold empathy without carrying everyone else's pain. You recognize when someone projects guilt, fear, or desire onto you, and you don't react. Other people's drama stops being your battlefield. A mature kind of compassion appears, loving without losing yourself. It's fascinating how, once you know yourself, you start seeing the emotional theater of the world more clearly. That person who accuses you for no reason is often fighting something within. The coworker who belittles you doesn't want to hurt you. They're just trying to soothe their own insecurity. And once you understand that, something magical happens. Instead of reacting, you observe. Instead of absorbing, you respond with awareness. That's real emotional immunity. Not coldness, but discernment. It's when you can feel empathy without losing your center. You still care, but you no longer drown. Because you understand that feeling someone else's pain doesn't mean sinking into it. Loving without self-erasure is one of the clearest signs of spiritual maturity. It's when your heart opens, but your soul keeps its boundaries strong. Before, you might have thought being a good person meant always being available, always understanding, always open. Now you see their strength in saying no. Walking away from a toxic space isn't selfish, it's energetic hygiene. Empathy without awareness becomes a prison. With awareness, it becomes power. And that power gives you back the lightness of not carrying what was never yours. The most freeing part is realizing you don't need to fix anyone. Just recognize projection and let it pass. The criticism that once broke you now becomes data. The looks that once hurt you now reveal what the other person hides. The more you understand this, the less you get entangled. You become a calm observer in the middle of chaos, an open heart with grounded roots. And that's when something new starts to grow inside you, a serenity that doesn't depend on circumstances or anyone else's emotions. It's the kind of peace that comes when you finally learn to stay whole, even in the face of someone else's imbalance. If this sign spoke to you, share in the comments what you've been learning from your spiritual journey. It's funny how, when you stop getting lost in everyone else's voices, your own starts to sound clearer. What once felt like a vague hunch now speaks in a language you understand. It's subtle but unmistakable. A feeling in your chest, a gentle shiver, a certainty that doesn't need proof. The fourth sign is that your intuition activates deeply. You start trusting what you feel more than what you're told, and life begins to guide you through subtle signs and synchronicities. You can feel when something doesn't vibe right, even without evidence. Decisions start coming from within, and life begins to flow more smoothly. Synchronicities happen often. People, signs, and events seem to guide your path. Life stops feeling random. It gains rhythm, coherence, and direction. You begin to trust what you feel more than what others say. Intuition is like a compass that's always been there. It just doesn't work when you keep spinning in circles. It doesn't need logic, only space. And when your heart quiets down, you begin to feel, truly feel, what's aligned and what isn't. It's not a voice in your head. It's a vibration in your body. A pause. A gentle warning that, if ignored, time eventually confirms. At first, you doubt it. The mind tries to argue, demand evidence, and look for guarantees. But the more you insist on trusting, the more you realize intuition is a muscle. It grows stronger with use. Each time you follow that inner pull and things work out, a new layer of confidence is born. And that confidence becomes your compass, guided not by fear or logic, but by the wisdom of feeling. Suddenly, life starts responding in ways that seem magical, but they're simply aligned. Coincidences turn into signs. Random encounters become messages. Even delays start to make sense. It's as if the universe begins speaking your language, and you finally learn how to listen. That harmony creates a rhythm between what you feel and what unfolds. And the more you live like this, the more you understand that intuition doesn't protect you from challenges. It prepares you for them. You stop moving from anxiety and start moving from direction. It's no longer about predicting the future, but about being present enough to recognize it when it arrives. And that's when you realize, true wisdom doesn't come from thinking more, but from feeling better. When you start trusting the rhythm of your intuition, you realize life has its own rhythm too. Nothing stays constant, and everything that resists the flow eventually breaks. That's when you understand that feeling the timing of things is a form of wisdom, and that growth is really about learning to dance with the cycles. The fifth sign is that you begin to embrace psychological cycles. You begin to understand that life is made of deaths and rebirths. Crises stop feeling like punishments and become portals. You learn to retreat when it's time for silence and to bloom when it's time for action. You stop wasting energy trying to control what's meant to change. You create for joy, not for validation. Spiritual maturity begins when you stop assuming something's wrong just because things are still. You learn to honor the winter of the soul, those moments when nothing blooms but everything is being prepared beneath the surface. Life teaches you there's a time to expand and a time to rest. Fighting that rhythm is like shouting at the ocean, useless and exhausting. When you embrace the cycles, you realize chaos is part of order too. The falls, the pauses, the restarts, none of that is failure. It's the breathing of existence. The problem is, we were trained to fear emptiness, to believe stillness means failure. But in truth, silence is the interval where the new begins to take shape. It's in that space between one cycle and the next that you reconnect with what truly matters. This awareness completely changes your relationship with crisis. They stop being punishments and become initiations. Every loss reveals hidden value. Every pain opens the way to a higher level of awareness. You start realizing that what the ego calls the end is really the birth of a new version of you. Suffering stops being something to avoid and becomes something to walk through with purpose. Accepting this natural movement brings a lightness to living. You stop chasing always fine and start valuing always true. You learn to rest when your body asks for silence and act when your soul asks for expression. There's no guilt in pausing, no guilt in shining. Only the understanding that every phase has its beauty, and forcing time only drains your vital energy. When you live in tune with these cycles, creativity becomes effortless. You create for pleasure, not pressure. You act from purpose, not from the need to prove yourself. Work turns into expression, not punishment. And life, with all its tides, ups and downs, stops being a fight against the unpredictable and becomes a graceful dance with the inevitable. Over time, as you learn to dance with life cycles, you realize there's nothing left to prove, not to yourself, not to anyone else. That's when the need for recognition starts to dissolve. The sixth sign is that you transcend the need for external validation. Your self-worth becomes independent of other people's approval. You compare yourself less and appreciate your own rhythm more. You start choosing authenticity over acceptance. Other people's opinions lose their power to shake you. True freedom begins the moment you understand you have nothing to prove. For most of your life, you were conditioned to measure yourself by someone else's ruler. Parents, friends, co-workers, social media. Every compliment became fuel, every criticism, poison. Until one day, that balance stops making sense. You realize the price of pleasing is far too high. It costs your peace, your essence, your spontaneity. And you finally see there's no real success when your soul is exhausted from trying to fit in. The shift happens quietly but deeply. Little by little, you start acting without waiting for applause, and that changes everything. You choose what feels right, even if no one else understands. You walk away from what doesn't resonate, even if it looks right. And for the first time, your choices are guided not by the fear of disappointing others, but by the desire to stay true to yourself. That inner alignment becomes your new definition of value. It's fascinating how, when you stop chasing approval, the right people naturally find you. The fake fades, the superficial drifts away, and what's real remains. Because authenticity recognizes authenticity. When you stop molding yourself to be accepted, you start attracting people who connect with who you really are, not with who you pretend to be. And that's when a rare kind of peace is born. The peace of not needing to convince anyone of anything. You realize the most powerful validation is looking in the mirror and feeling at home. Self-love isn't about thinking you're perfect. It's about allowing yourself to be human, imperfect, evolving, real. In that space of radical acceptance, life finally flows without effort. And the most beautiful part? This freedom doesn't isolate you. It expands you. When you let go of the need to prove, what used to be performance becomes presence. You become an example, not because you try to inspire, but because you live in truth. And those who live in truth inevitably inspire others to do the same. When you finally free yourself from the need to prove your worth, something profound happens. Your energy comes back to you. What once scattered itself trying to please others begins to gather, focus, and flow with intention. That's when you realize true strength isn't about controlling the world, but about understanding your own energetic field. The seventh sign is that you gain energetic sovereignty. You learn to say no with love and firmness. You start protecting your space as if guarding a sacred temple. Other people's energy no longer defines you. You filter it, choose it, and direct it. You see pain as a teacher, not an enemy. And finally, you understand. Awakening isn't about withdrawing from the world, but aligning with it consciously. With time, you realize not every connection is nourishment. Some drain you, others empower you. Energetic sovereignty is knowing the difference. It's the ability to feel empathy without losing yourself, to listen without absorbing, to help without carrying. You stop being an emotional sponge and become a conscious filter, one that welcomes what uplifts and releases what doesn't belong. Saying no stops being a defensive act and becomes an act of love. Love for your peace, your purpose, your vital energy. You understand that the world doesn't need more exhausted people trying to fix everything. It needs whole people who know where their boundaries begin and end. That's how love becomes purer. When it's born from integrity, not guilt. Pain, once seen as an enemy, reveals itself as a silent teacher. Every discomfort shows you where energy stopped flowing. Every conflict becomes a mirror, a reflection of what still needs to be integrated. You start to thank even the ruptures, because you understand that everything that hurts also redirects you. Awareness, then, becomes your true shield. And when this sovereignty awakens, the external world loses its power to shake you. You don't close yourself off, you root yourself. You learn to stay in peace even in chaos, to radiate presence even in confusion. Awakening isn't an escape from the world, it's a return to it, but with clarity. Because when your energy is in order, even silence becomes a language. Jung once said that true healing begins when the ego learns to serve the soul. And maybe that's exactly what awakening does. It breaks the old self, so the essential can finally be born. It's not a happy ending. It's a real beginning. The moment you stop searching for answers in the world and start listening to the questions that rise from within. Spiritual awakening isn't about becoming someone better, but about remembering who you were before you started to adapt. It's a second kind of maturity, the one where you stop seeking salvation outside and start building peace within. Where there used to be fear, presence takes root. Where there used to be control, trust begins to bloom. And where there used to be emptiness, meaning quietly starts to grow. If you recognize yourself in these signs, know this: you've gone through an initiation few ever understand. It's a silent, yet transforming journey, one that shapes the soul without needing witnesses. Because true awakening doesn't make noise. It shifts the entire field around you. That's how light spreads, not through effort, but through alignment. And maybe that's the most beautiful part of all this. Those who awaken naturally awaken others, simply by existing. There's no greater purpose than embodying your own truth. And when you do, without even trying, you become a lighthouse for those still walking in the dark. You inspire not with words, but with presence. Take a deep breath. You made it here for a reason. And if these words touched something inside you, it's because the process has already begun. The soul is never in a hurry. It only awakens when the time is right. If this video resonated with you, like, subscribe, and comment which of these 7 signs speaks most to you. Write in the comments, "I'm awakening." And don't forget to watch the next video suggested on screen. It's the natural continuation of this journey.